would say a deal breaker would be dishonesty. You have to be truthful in order to build respect.
A deal breaker for me when I'm dating somebody is rudeness. First of all, I was raised to be just extremely courteous and kind to other people, so in and of itself that's annoying. But to me, rudeness kind of connotates to me like an ego issue, you know what I mean? If you're being rude, it means you're not thinking about other people. So that's just not cool for me. I find that very unattractive.
A deal breaker for me would be like asking a lot of demands or I guess expectations. When one is asking or looking for me to make them happy, not to add to their happiness, that's a deal breaker.
A deal breaker for me when I'm dating someone is a man who doesn't have a purpose, isn't living his God-given destiny. If the relationship becomes abusive in any way, physical, mental, sexual, emotional, anything like that, if conflict resolution is never possible, so if we can't work through to understanding, then I think that's a sign that maybe the relationship just needs to go back to friendship, or it definitely can't continue forward in a dating relationship.
Well, when you want to show somebody that you're more than friends, I mean, it can be, let's say, compliments. But at the end of the day, if that goes unnoticed, sometimes just talking to somebody, opening up a little bit.
The way I show someone that I'm more interested, and obviously I did video, is show that I cared, you know? I wanted to know more about them, want to get to know them, you know, on a personal basis, on a spiritual basis. You know, I took interest into her family and her friends and her hobbies. You know, and you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, you just have to be willing to go out on the limb and get to know someone.
I would hang around the kitchen while they did dishes and just talk about God. Everyday things.
I try to show someone I'm interested in being more than friends by casually sort of making excuses to touch them in weird ways when you're like hanging out in groups, kind of like, oh, reaching for the chair at the same time, or having those like connection moments, just kind of casually in a larger setting.
My greatest fear regarding love, well, I would say there is no fear in love because perfect love casts out all fear. So I would tweak that question and say, what is my fear about relationship, I guess. I guess rejection or abandonment. Yeah.
Love can be a scary thing, it's true, but the Bible says that love casts out fear. Perfect love casts out fear, and I really believe that to be true, because the one thing that people are mostly afraid of is rejection. And in the end, when you know that you're accepted by the beloved, then rejection doesn't really hold as much water as it used to, so to speak. It doesn't have as much weight. And so to be constantly reminding yourself that even if this person rejects you, even if they break your heart, even if they leave, you still have Jesus, and He will always comfort you, and He will always be there for you, and He is your rock, and that's it. So to be afraid, yes, it's natural. Everyone has fears. But I think to look them right in the eye and to say, you know what, I want to find love, I want to be happy, I want to find that person. You have to overcome those fears. And I think with knowing that Jesus will be with you whether you're alone or whether you're with somebody is a great place to start.
I think that the first thing I notice when I look at a woman is her smile. She has to have a really genuine and great smile, and that to me is very attractive.
Well, for me, I mean, it was something to do with his personality, I guess. He was really inquisitive about me and interested in me, finding out more about me. And so that's something we've always kind of given our friends as advice to, just to ask questions about the other person and be interested in who they are.
Looks, to me, make up 100% of my decision. and personality and character make up 100% of my decision. Like, to me, I want to be with someone who's the most beautiful person that I've ever seen. But at the same time, I want to be married to someone who has the strongest and best character in anyone that I've ever seen. So,
in the grand scheme of things, I don't want to be shallow, but looks, they're important. I mean, it is very important for you to be attracted to your partner. So yeah, definitely looks are important, but I also think you have to be in yourself what you're expecting to be out of another person. Like, you can't be not taking care of yourself and be like overweight or whatever and then expect to have like this like 10 out of 10 person, like, you know what I mean?
Looks are important because, I mean, there's a saying that says what you do to get them, you have to do to keep them. So if you're looking good initially, you keep yourself looking good, you know, as you go on.
I feel like looks on a scale 1 through 10, 10 being the highest, 7. I mean, I feel like if this is a person I'm going to be waking up and seeing every single day of my life, oh, he better be handsome. I mean, let's be serious here. I mean, we're human, and I mean, I feel like the first thing that we do see is, you know, it's a physical attraction, but then it's more than that. It's the heart. You know, that's really the beauty of an individual. Like,
the most important attribute a wife can have for me is that she be supportive and faithful. Obviously, a woman of God doesn't hurt.
The most important attribute for my partner, my wife, to have is that she's good with children. I think that that's something that's very important when you want to start a family. And I think that people that are good with kids are typically tender-hearted people. So if you want to have kids, that's an important attribute.
For me, the most important thing is prayer. A person that who's a prayer warrior, she has to be a prayer warrior. A person that can say, I got this, and goes to the prayer closet, prays it out. Someone that I can really be intimate with in that context, you know, to talk about the things of God, to, you know, to be human in front of, you know, because it's hard sometimes too. At least I grew up in a culture, in a society where guys had to keep it all together. And when I found Jesus, Jesus said, you don't have it all together. And that's the point. I'm the one that has it all together, and you just follow me. And so having someone that I can be vulnerable with and sort of pray my weaknesses through, and having someone there, just being there, you know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but just there.
I have 2 funny grandparents. A grandfather and another grandfather from both sides. And my one grandfather would always tell me when I was little, David, read my lips, don't get married. And my other grandfather would say, David, find a rich girl, get her pregnant, and you'll end up really happy. So I had really bad marriage advice. They were obviously kidding. What was the question?
the best relationship advice I had ever received is to be very observant of other relationships, relationships that have been going on for years, particularly marriages, or I would say I look at my parents as an example. They never really verbally given me like advice. I mean, they've given me advice that's stuck with me, but I feel like it's always wise to really just observe other relationships as well, and just kind of pick things that will work for the individual, for the couple, you know, to just form it into just like a great thing.
I think that the best relationship advice I've ever received is to take it slow and to just become friends first and to build a foundation of friendship and then take it from there and see where the Lord leads you.
Probably love. And when I say love, I don't mean like the warm, fuzzy feeling that kind of comes and goes like with your emotions. I mean that love that's like the conscious choice, where you're being patient you're choosing to be patient, you're choosing to be kind, you're choosing to be long-suffering, you're choosing not to keep their thoughts in mind. And I don't think you necessarily have to be a Christian to have those traits or maintain those traits in a relationship, but I think those qualities universally are what will make a successful relationship in the long run.
I once heard some great advice from Kira Sedgwick, who is married to Kevin Bacon. And she said, when she was asked, you know, how have you guys managed to have such a successful marriage all this time? And she said, you have to keep the sex dirty and the fights clean. And I always think about that because I think that's really, really true. And there's a place for everything. There's a place to you have to know how to fight. You have to fight in a good way, in a productive way, not in a pointing fingers, guns blazing kind of way, because it's not really productive. Good fights should come out with both parties saying, wow, we just accomplished.
I think a successful relationship or marriage it's a bunch of things. It's not just one thing. It's friendship, it's passion, it's romance, it's love, it's a commitment, it's respect, it's truth and honesty, and it's two people really working through the barriers that life brings up as they're in a relationship.
Well, there's the one level of it where it's like, this would be like slumber party with my best friend forever, you know? Which is just a fun aspect of it. And then there's the spiritual aspect of it, which is that, you know, two becoming one, and you guys are gonna, you know, you start your life together and God is in it and all of that. But I think on a day-to-day level, what marriage is really all about is having a vision together. And always knowing that I'm gonna have an off day, you're gonna have an off day. Hopefully we won't both have an off day at the same time. That sometimes happens as well. But that you'll be there to lift me up when I'm having a hard time, and I'll be there to lift you up when you're having a hard time. Because it's in the day-to-day that a marriage really exists, I feel.
Marriage means being very good at saying, I love you, I'm sorry, and let's move forward. That's what marriage means to me, just being able to just get those three things under your belt and moving on with whatever comes your way in life.
What makes a successful relationship, to me, in my opinion, would be having a sense of self still, knowing the difference between codependency and interdependency. While still having your individuality while still being honest and respectful.
Marriage to me means having a partner in life, someone who's going to be with you through everything, through the hard times, through the fun times, through moving across the country, through moving across the world, through financial greatness, financial loss, through having kids, through whatever come what may, you have a partner to go through it with that's not going to reject you or ignore you or let you do it on your own, that they're there for life.
I was having a conversation with somebody via text, and they were really getting down on themselves about like they're not significant and not worth effort. And I was at work at the time, so I asked my boss if I could get off. I left work and traveled to where they were, which was probably about 3.5 hours commuting, with one flower, just to let her know you're worth it. And I only stayed for 5 minutes, and then I, traveled back like 3 hours.
The most romantic thing for me that was done for me was when David came down to Florida from New York City to propose, and I really felt pursued because he flew all the way down to do that, and that was really special.
Some of the most romantic things are when somebody goes out of their way to do something very, very good for you, very, very kind for you. It's when they're, they just see that your toilet is running over and over and over again, and they fix it without being told, hey, my toilet's broken. They just notice your toilet's broken and they fix it. Now that is not your typical romantic thing, but to me that just means so much. It means A, this person is thinking about me, he doesn't want my toilet to run and run and run and run and run and run, and B, he doesn't have to be told how to to do something or to take care of something. He's just going to go out and do it. Why? Because he cares about me. And it shows in the actions of that.
I think you should date at least 10 years. Just kidding. No, we dated for 10 years, so. And that was a very interesting thing. But that's because we got together when we were 15. We started dating around, or maybe 16. So I think it's good to date for probably like at least a year before getting engaged.
I believe two people should date as long as they need to date. I used to have a nice, neat answer years ago when I first became a Christian, 1 year and that's it. And now as a woman who is getting ready to go back to school, I'm establishing myself in a new professional way. I don't really see a definite timeline and time frame, but I will say that I think even if a dating relationship goes on for X number of months or years, you know whether that's the person you want to be with long term or not. So I think the key is communicating that and then deciding, are we ready for the next steps or should we continue in a dating relationship?
I think you should be with someone long enough to see them in all 4 seasons of the year. That doesn't necessarily mean a year, but people's attitudes and moods change a lot with the seasons. So I think it's important that you've at least seen them in a portion of each season of the year. And I also think it's important that however long it takes, you've seen the person go through an extreme emotional high and an extreme emotional low, and to see how they handle that, because I think those are all important things to know about someone before entering into marriage.
I think before you even think about getting married, you should be preparing all the things. You should make sure you're marriageable, like right in that moment. I think an engagement should be no longer than it takes to plan the wedding.
A month, 2 months, 3 months. I mean, it's a personal preference. Do you have the finances to have the wedding that you want in 2 months? By all means, you know, I definitely feel like it's at that point, once you're engaged, it's up to the individual to make that decision.
I think once you go beyond kissing, in my opinion, like the slope gets really hard to backtrack up.
I think the Bible says it very loud and clear to not have sex. That's far enough.
In terms of physical boundaries, I have a two-tiered response. My first response is the Bible's very clear about fornication, and it's very clear about how sexual sin is sinning against the body. And so sex of any kind is a no-no, because it's not healthy when it's expressed outside of a marriage covenant. And then my second response for areas that are not as crystal clear, you know, kissing and French kissing and things of that nature, the couple needs to discuss that. They need to discuss where each other feel comfortable. And as soon as someone feels uncomfortable, then a boundary needs to be set on that, because everything you do in a relationship, including your physical affection, should be to serve and to bless the other person. And so if someone is feeling uncomfortable, then that's not serving or blessing them.
We met online.
Yep. So it's not a rule of thumb. It's just where God, for me, I knew that's how God was going to work that part of my life out, because he knew that was the kind of person I was, that I was more comfortable building a profile, sort of hiding behind an online profile for a little bit, and just to get the initial in there. But it's not a rule of thumb. But we met online. God used that. Where God began and where I began, it sort of blurs. I just know that in my way of doing things, I came to the end of myself one day, and I was crying in bed and just sort of gave up. And it was one of those things that came out of doing something out of my comfort zone. So it began with that, and then it began with, God, I come to the end of myself, and then we met online. All circumstance. If you're not Christian, it'll look like happenstance and serendipity, but I believe it was God, and God using the platform that was most comfortable to me and her to bring us together. So we met online. Shouldn't be a rule of thumb, but if you're comfortable with it, God will be with you no matter what you do.
I think online dating sites are a good secondary option. I think putting yourself out there is the best way to go about finding a romantic relationship.
I think online dating sites are a good option, especially for places like New York City. I wouldn't say it's better or worse, really. I think it's a new sort of avenue for dating than just meeting people and going out. But I do think that it is important to set extreme, very clear boundaries for yourself before actually ever going on a date, because it is an internet world and there are lots of creepers out there. So I think you need to set even more strict boundaries with online dating than you do with just basic dating, just from the get-go for yourself.
Esther and I met each other at a very young age, so it's not like we were searching actively at the age of 15.
I was.
She was. She was ready to get hitched at 15, and it took me another 10 years to get on board that ship. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
I wasn't necessarily actively searching, for a husband. I wasn't going out and dating because, again, we were so young. But it was definitely something that was in the back of my mind. So when I met David, I was immediately journaling, at the age of 15, journaling in my diary and praying, Lord, is this the one? If this is not the one, take away the feelings. So it was very serious for me from the beginning. And I think after about a year or two of knowing each other, we both knew that we wanted to marry each other. My timing was I want to get married at the age of 18, and David was I need to figure out, my identity, my career, and then get married. So God had a good plan in mind, and He let us not make that mistake of getting married super young, but allowed us to mature for the right time.
If you're single,
oh yeah,
I'd say look to the person to your left and look to the person to your right. And ask one of them out. Just go for it. No, that's horrible advice. I think if you're single, I think focus on trying to get your life right. Trying to, if there's a degree you're reaching for, if there's a job you're trying to get, if you want to get your life right with God, do the practical things that you can do to improve yourself before you take the plunge and start dating and trying to get married, because I think you're more attractive to somebody if you have your life more in order and you have your priorities straight. So I think that's kind of the best advice I could give. What would you say, honey?
I think my advice for somebody that's single is learn to be happy by yourself and don't look to for a man or a woman to complete you, but look to God. God is the only thing that can make you whole and complete and feel completely content in life. And then when someone special comes along, it's just a beautiful addition to your life.
The advice that I would give to single people would be, don't get frustrated. I know it can get frustrating, but I always looked at it as a time where I was preparing myself spiritually, personally, professionally, just in other ways, just to be prepared for when that person comes. So try not to get frustrated, and I'm 32 years old, so people tend to think age-wise that's a hindrance. Oh, I'm not getting any younger, but just be patient.
The thing that I was thinking of was that the best relationship advice someone's ever given to me is, in going into a relationship, don't be too intense about it. Don't put your full heart and soul out on a limb, carrot in your sleeve, even if you are a very passionate person like I am, chill out. Give it 60 to 75% of what you would normally give a relationship,
But the one thing I would tell them is just to come to the end of yourself. There's a reason why God has you single, and there's a reason why you get married. And the one thing I realized, and I think the only reason God allowed me to have a relationship that actually led to marriage, was when I realized that marriage is for a purpose. There's a distinct, unique purpose that God has brought to the two of us that we're supposed to accomplish.
The one thing that I wish I'd known when I was single, that I have to give up when I got married, is that I don't have complete control of my own schedule anymore.
I guess for me, one thing that I knew that I would have to give up, but I didn't realize quite how much of it I was going to have to give up, but being right about things and really just letting things go. Again, coming from an only child perspective, that's something that's really difficult for me, that I see as my way of doing something as the perfect way, and learning how to for peace sake, letting things happen in other ways that may even be better, but I don't see them as better. So I guess I just had like a rose-colored vision of what that meant, and it's a little bit more letting go than I had realized.
I think if you're in a relationship with an unbeliever, you just have to be very careful that the person that you're dating is not having more of an impact on you than you're having an impact on them. So if your partner is kind of morally bringing you down and you're not encouraging them and lifting them up, I think that that's like a really good sign that you shouldn't be in that relationship. I think it takes a very special person to be able to date somebody who has just very different beliefs from you. It's like if you love to hike, and it's your favorite thing to do. Would you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody that hates the outdoors and wants nothing to do with the mountains? And so I would say it's kind of like that if you have a really strong faith, and that's like the most important thing about your identity. You would want someone that's at least interested and willing, and willing to at least like engage in that, and see what it's all about.
I mean, I know people in my family where one's a believer, one's a non-believer. Bible kind of talks about there's a circumstance for it, but I don't remember too well, and I don't want to be. I'm not an authority on it. All I know is that God tells me to pray, and in prayer, great things can happen. My father, who was a backslider when I was a kid, came to Jesus, studied to be a pastor now, and it's all because of the people around him who prayed for him. And prayer changes lives, and that's the one thing I think in my spirit I can give anyone, whether you're the girl in the relationship or the guy in the relationship or the parent of the person in the relationship. Just pray until the change happens, because that's what God's called you to do, and that's literally the only thing I think you can do.
I have to tell them to end it. For me, I've just seen too many things go too far in that, and I've seen the hurt that comes from it. And if you're not on that same page spiritually, there's so many other things that are going to come up. You're never going to be able to completely show all of who you are to that person. And that's so important when moving towards marriage. And at the end of the day, that should be the reason for getting into any relationship, is for it to move towards marriage at whatever pace is right for you. But to enter into a marriage not being able to completely be transparent and completely share that whole side of yourself with them just seems like a bad idea.
My favorite thing about marriage is definitely the little things in our relationship, like cooking dinner together and just laughing and playing around and goofing off, and also the most important thing definitely
is what do you?
Well, sex,
My favorite thing about being married is making dinner together, even though we fight like cats and dogs. But it's still really fun. I like making dinner and sitting down and eating together and talking about our day.